Check. 2. Check. 2. Ben, give me a check. Oh, get that water.
How much? $10, $20?
Okay.
Hey, I got 1 million of them.
Check. 2. Check. 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 Ben, give me a check.
Check, check, double check. Hey, Ford South Chicago expansion, 500 new hires, advance quick.
Check. 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 Check.
Take a chill pill, man.
Check. 1, 2. See what I'm saying? It's not. Ben, give me a check. 1, 2.
Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, check. 1, 2, 1, 2.
right, everybody. I think we're ready.
I think so, too.
Oh, wow. The Ben Joravsky Show for your Tuesday, June 25th. Ben, back from California. How you feeling? Uh-oh. Oh, he's got the sunglasses. All right.
Go kiss the door, your stallion stands.
Okay.
Hey, man. I gotta
What?
wear my shades because I was in California,
Oh,
right?
okay. Ben's on like 1 hour of sleep. Your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, June 25th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we would like to thank the following unions for jumping on board and helping bring back the Ben Joravsky Show. First up, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. They helped out. You guys are awesome. Also, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9. And the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. Oh, maybe not. There. Hang tight. Hold on. Not yet, Ben. Ben Joravsky Show does not start now. Just 1 second. They updated my board here over the weekend while we were gone.
Don't you just hate when they do that?
Oh, my God. Oh, Lord. So, anyway, how you been, Ben?
Doing good.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Great.
Want us to start into my thing here?
No. We'll just wait till the intro. That's fine. We got a
One,
little bit of time.
2, 3.
Oh, okay. Well, you counting doesn't help out at all.
Hey, everybody, have some lifesavers.
The Ben Joravsky Show starts now. It is Tuesday, June 25th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, In These Times writer Miles Kampf-Lassen will join us, and we welcome back our favorite grassroots organizer, the one, the only, Amisha Patel. And now your host, Chicago Reader columnist back from California, Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Oh, Those Dems Tuesday. And here's why. Great weekend. You have a good weekend, D?
Yeah, great weekend.
It was great. Certainly a long weekend, as the doctor said. We took 2 days off. We closed down the show. Although you were working like a busy little beaver last week. You came in on Friday, I think, and Thursday while I was jet setting in California. Went to visit my daughter in California. So took a couple days off and had a great time. Let's see. I saw a movie when I was in California. Saw a movie, The Dead Don't Die. If you like zombie movies, go see the zombie movie. It's a pretty good flick. Everybody in California, just like everybody in Chicago that I know, is talking about Quentin Tarantino's movie, eagerly counting down the days to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood comes out. So Chicago and California have that in common. Flipped out over scooters. Apparently scooters are a problem in L.A. like they are in the city of Chicago. Scooters are absolutely everywhere.
Oh, by the way, watch out for my scooter. I left it here in the studio. Rode a scooter here today.
Scooters everywhere.
I love it.
Really? I'm having a hard time.
You see my scooter over there, right? Come on.
That looks like my knapsack. Oh, but anyway, so, yeah, scooters everywhere in California, scooters everywhere in the city of Chicago. I can go on and on about scooters, but I'm going to hold off for the moment. Let's see. Bought myself a souvenir, everybody, when I was in California.
Oh, nice souvenir. I mean, you could get that here.
I knew you were going to say that. Yo, Dennis was going to say, why would you get a notebook in California if you can get a notebook in Chicago?
Doesn't say California, Lakers, nothing on it.
No, it says composition book. I bought it. It was just, it was a dollar store in Sunset Boulevard. I go, you know what? I need a new notebook. So I bought a notebook when I was in California. How about, and a pen. By the way, anybody needs pens? I got more pens.
Oh, man.
Very
exciting
productive
life you lead.
Productive time for me in California. I did what I always do, talk politics. And here's the thing about me, folks. I'm addicted to politics. I can go to any state, any city, any town, and engage myself in a political discussion with somebody I meet, generally a politician who's seeking votes. And that's exactly what happened. I was at this farmer's market on Sunday, D. And my wife and my daughter and her friends were all shopping for fruits and vegetables. It was kind of boring. I'm not really into farmers markets. So what I did was I found my way to this congressional candidate, this obscure congressional candidate in California, running against Adam Schiff. He's run 3 times. Sal Genovese. Sal, if you're listening, I told you I'd give you a shout out. And Sal is more of like a conservative Democrat, all right? So he is more of the conservative persuasion of the Democratic Party, kind of little to the like Joe Biden country, if you will. And he's running against Adam Schiff, who's leading the crusade against Donald Trump for potentially impeachment hearing. So I'm kind of an Adam Schiff fan. And so anyway, Sal Genovese and I got into this discussion right there in the middle of the farmers market. And folks, it kind of reminded me of conversations I've had in the city of Chicago all the time. Because I ask people, I just question people, it's this instinct I have, why do you behave the way that you do? Why do you as a voter behave the way you do? Like the city of Chicago, I'm always making fun of people in the city of Chicago, Dave, because they're so tolerant of politicians that don't do the things that they want, waste money, raise taxes, throw away millions of dollars of frivolous TIF deals, and they go, oh, I'm so outraged, and then they vote for the same guy again and again. I do not understand the mentality of Chicagoans. Well, maybe it's not just Chicagoans. I had this discussion, debate with Sal Genovese. So it started off with Sal saying maybe we shouldn't spend so much time fighting Donald Trump, and because Trump did get elected. And I said, well, actually, technically, Sal, he was not the victor in the last election. He got less votes than Hillary Clinton. And he said, well, Ben, we have the Electoral College system to protect the interests of the smaller states. And I said, Sal, you live in California, the largest state in the union. What do you care about the interests of smaller states? You should care about California. And then, so now we're in an argument. He has to defend his position. So what does he do? He does what most voters do when they don't know what to say. They blame it on the Founding Fathers. He goes, well, the Founding Fathers wanted this protection in the Constitution, so that's why we have it. To which I said the Founding Fathers also believed in slavery. Should we keep slavery around? The Founding Fathers didn't let women vote. Should we continue to deny women the right of votes? So what did he do at that point, D? He changed the subject, which is what everybody does when you get them in a corner.
Nice to see you made friends out there.
He goes, well, Ben, we can never pass it anyway, so what's the point of trying? There you go. That's a defeat. By the way, then I had to point out to him, just one more time, now I'm on a tangent here within a tangent, but just want to say, there are about 35 million voters in the state of California. They have 55 electoral votes. In the state of Wyoming, there are 532,000 or so voters. They have 3 electoral college votes. So that means, I did the math, there's 177 voters for every electoral representative in Wyoming, and 667,000 per one electoral voter in California. How is that fair? All right. So I'm not saying it's going to be easy to change the electoral college system. I'm not saying that Democrats should at this moment put everything aside and take on that fight, although I will say this, David Ferris is right, political scientist David Ferris is right. If the Republican Party had lost 2 elections in this century, because even though they won the popular vote, as the Democrats have, because of the Electoral College, they would have already been halfway through changing the system, because the difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party is that the Republicans play to win and the Democrats run around, I don't know, just to make friends. Anyway, it's hard to win, folks, when you don't fight to win. We got a great show today, everybody. Miles Kampf-Lass will be in here in these times. Maya, people go, where's Maya? Maya couldn't make it this week. She'll be back next week. Miles Kampf-Lassen was very kind enough to sit in for Maya. Misha Patel will be here from Grassroots Collaborative, our favorite community organizer. Guess what, D?
What's that?
She's bringing a mystery guest.
You're kidding me.
Oh, mystery guest will be coming in. We've talked about all the issues of the day, national issues, local issues, state issues. Probably talk about, I may ask Miles what he thinks about the Electoral College system.
Do it. Yeah, ask him.
I'll say, hey, Miles, what do you think about my conversation with Sal Genovese, who's running against Adam Schiff in California? So we got a lot of political talk ahead of us, but before we do that, the doctor's got the news.
Ben, did you say there was a mystery guest today?
Oh, yeah. mystery guest, man.
Oh, wow.
Misha's bringing in a mystery guest.
Whoa. Who could it be?
I don't know. I think I may know, but I'm not revealing.
Okay, so you know.
It may be
All
Sal
right.
Genovese.
People, this is not a pre-recording. It's not a bonus or a best stuff. No, we're live, and we're back at it. Still not a doctor, by the way. Ben took the red-eye home from California. He's operating on fumes this afternoon. But don't worry, listeners, because Ben Joravsky barely getting any sleep is business as usual here on the program. Really has become a staple.
I've got at least 1 hour sleep last night, D, all right? There's some guy talking behind me on the red eye to his son, explaining how you exit an airplane. But he was like, really, I think it was his son's first time on an airplane. So I kept
that's your cue to go to sleep.
He's like, well, what you do is when the plane lands, everybody's going to stand up and walk down the aisle. He's explaining the technicalities. Okay, Dad.
So let's talk about the national news happening this afternoon. Hey, Donald Trump, let's take a chill pill on those tweets to Iran, could we please? So the Iranian military downed an unmanned drone that they claimed had entered Iranian airspace last week, after which President Trump signed another round of sanctions directly targeting Iran's supreme leader. Yeah, it didn't take long for Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to respond. He called the new sanctions, quote, outrageous and idiotic, and suggests the administration was, and, well, no one said you can't dislike both of these people, quote, afflicted by mental retardation for imposing them. Rouhani said, quote, you sanction the foreign minister simultaneously with a request for talks? Now, there once was a time when a United States president would at least try to grab the bull by the horns here and settle this like a grown man, you know, maybe a behind closed doors private discussion over the phone or something. But people, that time is so far gone because it's 2019, Donald Trump is president, and now, well, Ben, we threaten our political enemies on social media for the whole world to see. Today, President Donald Trump sent another series of threatening tweets aimed at the Iranian regime, saying any attack by Iran or anything American will be met with great and overwhelming force, and in some areas, overwhelming will mean obliteration. No more John Kerry and Obama.
Yeah, that has brought up a good point when about an hour or so ago when we were talking about this news, that somehow or other, Donald Trump does not lose his access to his Twitter feed, even though he uses it to threaten an entire country with obliteration.
Meanwhile, some dude working at Arby's threatens a customer and gets
kicked
off.
Yeah, oh man, you can't do that. Take him off. He just threatened a whole country with obliteration. And the reality of Donald Trump, let's face it, folks, 3 years in, is that nobody knows what's true with Donald Trump. He lies continually. He lies just reflectively. So he says one thing one day and he completely contradicts himself the next day. So there's really no set. There's no way to really ascertain what he really feels. In the case of foreign affairs, foreign policies, he's always engaging in these Twitter fights with these powerful people. Remember the one with North Korea? I think the North Korean leader also called Donald Trump mentally retarded as well. So it's like these wild exchanges on Twitter, or wild exchanges, I don't know if the North Korean leader goes on Twitter, but these wild exchanges between Donald Trump and these foreign leaders, and then they sort of settle down. And then he becomes pals with them. I don't know if he's going to become pals with the Iranian, the leaders of Iran, but it's hard to figure out what exactly the foreign policy is. And overall, I have to say, I think most Americans have stopped listening, D, and it's kind of scary. I mean, you're talking about threats of nuclear obliteration. It was the same thing in North Korea, but you heard so much of it, it never materializes. He always seems to back off, so people just tune him out. I think that may be the greatest danger. Nobody knows whether they can trust the guy because he lies continually, and nobody really pays attention to what he says because he's so outrageous and extreme. But I do believe Twitter's got to rethink their policies, that the President of the United States can go on Twitter to threaten Iran with obliteration. But you're right, the guy from Arby's, they're really policing that guy really closely.
Yeah, not so much this guy.
No collusion.
But that dude from Arby's, get out of here, would you? All right, so who knows what the hell will happen after this, or if the Iranian president can even read what the tweet said. Does he know English? Can he read English?
No, but it's a very bizarre situation. I mean, when I take the deep dive into the United States relationships with Iran right now, it's so bizarre because Iran is an ally with Russia. And so here we have Putin, the head of Russia, is Trump's personal ally. He intervened in the election in 2016 to deliver it to Donald Trump. Donald Trump still maintains a friendly relationship with Putin, and yet he's at a war of words with Iran, which is Putin's ally. None of this makes any sense at all. Maybe, I don't know, if that's the logic to Donald Trump's reign as a foreign policy leader, then it's really working. But I think most people are just tuning in. In fact, the Sun-Times, there's these threats of nuclear obliteration, and it was on page... where was it? Oh, here, page 17 of the Sun-Times. Trump hits Iran at the top. I mean, after a while, you just tune it out. Right ahead above a headline that says, Trump, woman who accused him of assault, not his type. Did you see this one, D? This one is this is a journalist from the 1990s. E. Jean Carroll is her name, and she came out with an accusation against Donald Trump that he attempted to rape her, and I'm going to quote it right here. Writer E. Jean Carroll has claimed that a friendly encounter with Trump at Bergdorf Goodman in 1995 or 96 turned violent when the real estate mogul pushed her up against a dressing room wall, unzipped his pants, and forced himself on her. Carroll said that in a colossal struggle, she pushed him off and ran from the store. Trump told the Hill newspaper that Carroll is, quote, totally lying about the accusation, which he also denied earlier. Quote, I know nothing about this woman. I know nothing about her. It's just a terrible thing that people can make statements like that. And then she said, besides, she's not, quote, she's not my type. So very weird. This story is buried on page 17 right underneath the Iranian story. It just shows you that there's just this unreal world that we inhabit with Donald Trump as our president.
It's hard to believe, but luckily there are still a few sane people left in American government. A pair of congressmen have unveiled a bipartisan measure to block President Trump taking military action against Iran without congressional approval. An amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act being proposed by Democrat Rohit Khanna and Republican Trump loyalist, and that is until just now, Matt Gaetz, would block funding for military action in Iran without congressional approval. In other news nationally, just a little over 24 hours from now, our first Democratic presidential candidate debate will be taking place. Tomorrow will be part one. Remember, there's like 50 Democrats running here, so you have to divide the debates in two. We really have no update. I just figured I would use this time to ask you, Ben, which candidate do you have? Which one are you feeling in these debates here?
Well, right now, the candidate I'm leaning toward is Elizabeth Warren. I like Elizabeth Warren a lot. She's been fighting the good fight for so many years. There was an article about her upbringing in today's New York Times. Very cute picture of Elizabeth Warren at age when she was in third grade. Look at that, Leah. That's Elizabeth Warren when she was third grade. So I'm leaning toward Elizabeth Warren. I have to smile a little bit because Democrats in the know, the strategists, all tell me that she can't get elected. That one, America's not ready to elect a woman. I've heard this so many times from so many people who are supposedly in the know. Number two, she's too smart. Americans are not ready to elect somebody who's openly smart. Three, she has too many plans. This is the state of politics in America today. So too much specificity is going to hurt her and damage her. That's just the general notion that so many strategists in the know. And fourth, she's easy for Donald Trump to mock with because of her claims a few years back that somehow or other she has some kind of Native American heritage, and he mocks her by calling her Pocahontas. So supposedly, that's got her intimidated, and she won't win over, she won't win Wisconsin and Michigan because all the swing voters will be laughing at her because of Donald Trump's mocking. So for all these reasons, the woman who's got the most intelligence, the best plans, the widest array of ideas that she's ready to implement is not capable of winning an election, so we should not vote for her. So I'm really looking forward to see how Elizabeth Warren handles herself on the big stage. And I got to also tell you, I'm kind of curious about the one you like the best, Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, yeah. I love that guy.
Mayor Pete of South Bend, Indiana. Now, okay, in complete contrast to Elizabeth Warren. Elizabeth Warren has spent her entire career thinking of how you solve problems, thinking about how you deal with real serious issues that folks face in this country. Like, how do you pay for college education? We just talked about that with Leah a little while ago. How do you pay for college education? How do you pay for health care? Thinking about how you use government to help people. Here's Pete Buttigieg. He's 37 years old. He's been mayor of South Bend, Indiana. A city nobody it's a small city in Indiana, a red state. Few people know much about his record, but because he's a smooth talker and he's able to win over a few national media types, he's suddenly raking in millions of dollars, and it's like neck and neck. He's right there with Elizabeth Warren. How is that fair in any way? How does that show much sense? I don't know, but over the weekend, people suddenly starting to pay attention to Pete Buttigieg because of some police shootings in South Bend have shown what Henry Davis was talking about when he came on this show about, what was that, about a month ago, to talk about race relations in South Bend. And suddenly we sort of realize that Pete Buttigieg is, to put it mildly, not doing a very good job in managing race relationships between blacks and whites in South Bend, Indiana. And so now people are, oh, my God, they're looking at his record and his performance, and it's not matching up to the rhetoric. So I'm kind of curious how he's going to deal with this. All of a sudden, at age 37, after being mayor for 8 years, he's discovered that there's tense relationships between blacks and whites. So it's interesting. Yeah, I guess better late than never.
So I shouldn't invite you to the Pete Buttigieg party I got going this week.
No, I got issues with Pete Buttigieg. I have to say, I have issues with Pete Buttigieg. I don't understand how somebody could just emerge out of nowhere with having no background to speak of in terms of, having ideas to deal with the many problems the country faced, and then suddenly find himself at the top of the pack.
Take Ben off invite list. Okay. Yeah. Now, of course, we will keep you posted on these stories as today's program rolls along, but people, we're moving on. And after this short little break, people, we're going to find out what's going on locally. We're going to find out what else is news. It's the Ben Joravsky Show. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
After years of neglect, Illinois is finally getting its mojo back, and we're open for business.
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Discover the breadth and majesty of Chicago's architecture on a Chicago Architecture Center bus tour. From bungalows to Bauhaus, our expert docents will share the fascinating stories behind our city's architecture. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a bus tour right now. Oh my, look at that wonderful piece of architecture. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Yes, I love that commercial. Look at that lovely piece of architecture.
I was on a tour, man.
Look at the brain on Brad. Anyway, look at the big brain on Brad. No, we're just going to go with brain on Brad. Anyway, what you got for me in the local news,
dude? You're talking to yourself. We're about to find out what's going on locally. It's time for What Else is News. Okay, 3 questions. 1, which one of you listeners in Illinois is throwing a New Year's marijuana party? Because it's about to be legal, all right? 2, how do I get invited to that party? And 3, Alderman Carrie Austin, seriously, what the hell did you do? Our attempt at answering those questions is happening in moments. But first, we need to talk about what happened while we were away. Ben Joravsky, while you were out in California riding your scooter all about the city of Los Angeles. Don't lie, you love these scooters. I saw you the other day. Yeah. The Rolling Stones performed in Chicago. Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and those other guys were at Soldier Field. It was your typical Rolling Stones concert in 2019. Very old men.
For 10 trivia points, name one other member of the Rolling Stones.
Got nothing. Jim Jones.
Jim Jones?
I don't know.
Charlie Watts on drums.
Millennials, hang tight. We got a fantastic program for you. Glad you downloaded. Don't turn away. Don't tune out, okay?
By the way, did you listen to any Kurt Cobain over the weekend?
Dude, I listen to Nirvana every now and again on the regular. The question is, did you listen to Nirvana?
Still not got around to it, all right? Proco Joe, I'm going to get around to it, okay? Nirvana. It's on my list of things to do.
All right, so it was your typical, Rolling Stones concert in 2019. Very old men gyrating their hips about the stage. Yeah, your typical Rolling Stones show.
One guy was gyrating his hips.
Oh, they're all out there moving and jiving.
Wait, but can I just say something right now?
What?
Just to interrupt you. I know you got more important things to say, but listen. And God bless you, Rolling Stones. You're going strong. Whether you're pushing 80, you're still.
You can't even. Yeah.
Some suckers born every minute going out to Soldier Field. Is that where it was? Soldier Field? They filled Soldier's Field with a bunch of old people. God bless every one of you, okay? But I'm just going to put it out there. I got to take the strong stance. They pay me the big bucks to take the strong stance. Mick Jagger, the aforementioned man who was gyrating his hips, cannot dance. There you go. I had to say it.
Wow.
He
Okay.
can't dance.
Well,
that is not dancing. That's running around and doing gyrating.
Okay. Now, what I said being
Not
old
even
and gyrating,
gyrating.
that's fine. But saying they can't dance.
Can't dance. You ever see him? The man can't dance.
It's our last show at the Chicago Sun-Times, people. It was
know
nice
they're-
while it lasted. We're going to get booted out of here now.
Brian loves the Rolling
Chris
Stones.
Fusco just won't stop
Fusco's
talking
like,
about it.
He's a great dancer.
But it was your typical Rolling Stone show until singer Mick Jagger gave a special shout out to our newly elected mayor, Lori Lightfoot, saying, quote, I know, guys, this happened like last week, all right? But we've been gone for a long
I was
time.
so excited when it happened. Did you hear about what Jagger said?
Mick Jagger said, quote, I want to welcome Lori Lightfoot. He told the sold-out crowd, very nice, very nice. Then, out of nowhere, Mick Jagger cracks an Alderman Ed Burke joke. Ed Burke, alderman of the 14th Ward, the other crooked alderman who was recently indicted for abusing his power and shaking down a Burger King. Yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger said, quote, and I'm not doing a Mick
Come
Jagger.
on.
I'm not doing a Mick
Hello,
Jagger.
mate.
Oh, that was a really good one.
Hello.
He said, quote, I'm sorry Ed Burke couldn't make it tonight.
Oh, man, Mick Jagger's got a million of them. Not only can he dance, he can't do comedy. Let me say this.
Okay.
No,
You are just.
I was talking to Mick Jagger last night. He goes,
Oh, really?
Hello, Ben. He called me up. He goes, you know what he's going to talk about tonight, D, at the concert? TIFs. It's going to go, let's clean up that TIF program, Chicago.
right, so
and then all those people, those old people in this Soldier Field, yeah, man.
So we've offended our Rolling Stones fan. We've offended our British listeners. Let's keep going, Ben. Let's just lose them all.
What else?
Let's lose them all right now.
I'm just trying to think what other issues Mick Jagger can. He can weigh in on Pete Buttigieg.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I really want to hear what Mick Jagger has to say about Buttigieg. Should Buttigieg be allowed to run for mayor when he can't even do a decent job? Can he be allowed to run for president of the United States when he can't do a decent job of running South?
Also, the Ed Burke comment wasn't enough, huh? He's got to weigh in on national politics, too.
Come on, man.
He's there to sing, not sit there and debate.
Have you heard Mick Jagger singing lately? All right.
Please stop.
God dang. No, but you know what? God bless the Rolling Stones. I said it already. They're going strong. 78. I think he's 78 years old. Yeah. Miles, our next guest, a huge Rolling Stones fan.
Oh, really?
I am actually.
Are you? Really?
Yeah, I'm trying to get tickets to the show tonight. So if any of your listeners are holding extra tickets,
Shamelessly appealing for tickets.
So, Ben Joravsky, the question here, does Mick Jagger follow Chicago politics? And more importantly, do you think he listens to the Ben Joravsky
Yes,
show?
he's a huge listener right now.
did you see he made that comment about Italian beefs and Malort at the show too?
No, somebody is feeding him these lines, clearly. But
kidding.
tonight he will be discussing the TIF program, okay? He goes, I don't understand how you could spend all that money on the north side and ignore the south
Please
side.
stop with the accent.
You know, by the way, Mick Jagger, they got their music from Chicago Blues, which is a lot of the birthplace of the Chicago Blues.
Chess Records.
Chess Records, South Side. So Mick Jagger, tonight, on stage, will speak up for the South Side of the TIF program. He'll say, hello, mate, spend more of that money.
Okay, well, if he
on
listens to the show, you just upset Mick Jagger.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Miles, in your humble opinion, can Mick Jagger dance? If you could,
I don't think he dances as much as he prances, but I think that's
More of a prancer than a dancer.
I think so, but I think that's what people are paying for. I like your kind of chimney sweep version of him, where he's a little cockneyed.
should be sweet. That's like the dude. What was his name in Mary Poppins?
Yeah, Dick Van Dyke.
Dick Van Dyke. I'm doing my Dick Van Dyke imitation.
Okay, moving on.
After years of neglect, Illinois is finally getting its mojo back, and we're open for business.
Ben, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker may be right. The following comes from the Chicago Sun-Times and one Tina Sfondeles. Recreational marijuana is now roughly 6 months away from being legal across Illinois. Governor J.B. Pritzker signed the bill into law today. That means residents 21 and over will be able to buy marijuana at dispensaries as soon as January 1st. Illinois now joins 10 other states that have legalized recreational marijuana. In Vermont and Washington, D.C., cannabis possession and cultivation is legal, but sales are not regulated. Illinois and Vermont both legalized the drug through the legislative process and not via ballot initiative.
Yeah, all right, listen, everybody knows my position on the legalization of marijuana. I've been advocating it for years and years and years, and now that it's happened, I have this, it's like, is that all there is attitude? You know what I'm saying? This anticlimactic attitude. I know I should be happier. To me, again, all the reasons for legalizing reefer that they've stated in the state, like the notion of using it to raise more money, I think are the wrong reasons. That to me, the war on drugs was a colossal failure. It should never have been waged, and we should have just stopped the war on drugs 30 years ago when Mick Jagger was in his 40s, okay? Mick Jagger, by the way, big reefer head back in the day. You didn't know that, did you?
I mean, come on.
He got busted.
No, a rock and roll guy smokes pot.
I believe he got busted for hashish. Okay. By the way, is hashish going to be legal? I did not know that. I mean, the variation. Back in the day, D, when I was in college, before you were born, guys smoked hashish. Do they? I'm going
There's
to
going to be hemp necklaces for everyone. That's
Wait,
part
time
of it.
out. This is going to show an astounding amount of ignorance about cannabis.
Well, that never happens on this show.
Miles, I'm putting you on the spot. What is the difference between hashish and marijuana?
I can't. That's some kind of chemical breakdown has to do with the THC levels. I mean, really, what's being sold now? I was just in California, the dispensary. I know you were too. The dispensaries there, they have these mixes of the CBD oil with the THC with the weed oil, so people can kind of make their own concoctions of whatever kind of weed cocktail they're interested in, which is a far cry from what was available back in the 70s.
All right, I'm going to say something else here. I'm going to just go out. I've already, I've gone out on the limb about Mick Jagger not being able to dance, although you say it's prancing, not dancing. A
YouTube live chat. Is Mick Jagger a prancer or dancer?
Yeah.
Let's solve this.
What's that other the marijuana what is it?
CBD.
Yeah, CBD. Wasn't feeling well. Someone goes, Ben, try this CBD. I shouldn't say this because it was technical. No, CBD is legal, right?
Is, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they gave me it did nothing.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think that the CBD thing is just a complete utter hoax.
I have a lot of feelings on that. I could go in. I mean, I think that a lot of these shops that are set up that are serving CBD they're just basically stand-ins for once legalization happens, and they're all just going to become dispensaries then. And right now they can't sell the high-grade CBD stuff which they have in California. So here people are like, oh, it doesn't really do anything. If you get the stuff in Oakland or in LA or something, it's a different level. So I think we're getting the fake stuff now, but January 1st comes around and
We're
it's
going
going
to
to be
get
a
the
different
real
story.
CBD.
Yeah.
But this guy, Ben, try the CBD. It didn't do anything for you. By the way, I got to tell you about California. People do smoke a lot of marijuana in California. I was sitting poolside just Sunday. I just told you this story. Some guy comes out and he goes, hey, man, want to do a little daytime smoking? And they were passing it around like, sorry, man, I'm cool.
That's how he sounded?
Yeah, he was kind of like, yeah.
Like Tommy Chung? Just like Tommy Chung?
Hey, what's better, my Tommy Chung imitation or my Mick Jagger
Please
imitation?
don't go back to that well, okay? We got the listeners. We don't want to lose them.
Anyway, so I agree with you. I think that it's a hoax in that CB, whatever it is.
Oh, the live stream chat is weighing in. Mick Jagger, is he a prancer or a dancer? Well, Pat Rod says neither. He's a gyrator.
Yeah, I don't know. Elvis was a gyrator. Mick Jagger, it's like watching someone do aerobics. You know what I mean? He's just sort of jumping around. And,
At this point, isn't it just impressive? He's a 70-year-old man. He's out here laying it all for 2 hours.
Yeah, no, I'm not. Look, God bless him.
Yeah.
I'm happy he's well and people love him, and so.
All right, and finally
power
here,
to
we'd
you.
love to hear Miles' take on opinion on this as well. Finally here, another day, another shady alderman in Chicago.
Goodness, we'll talk about
This
this
news broke
later.
right as we were leaving for break, Ben. Alderman Carrie Austin, Ben, pop quiz. Which ward is Carrie Austin?
Come on, 34th.
Oh, my God.
All right. What was her husband's name?
Dude, you're the dork, not me.
He held the seat before her.
That is correct. Very good.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, I believe.
No, it's not.
All right, very similar to Alderman Ed
Lemuel.
Burke. Very similar to Alderman Ed Burke, Carrie Austin's ward office was raided by federal agents. And also similar to Ed Burke, Yeah, we now wait for what exactly Carrie Austin did or did not do. But if you were to ask Austin, she'd say she did nothing. Here's the quote from Austin, quote, "I really have done nothing wrong." See, she said it.
Oh, well, it must
There
be
you
true
go.
then.
She went on to say, I'm going to try to get back to what the people elected me for. The following update comes from the Illinois Political Bulldogs over at Illinois Politico and One Chia Capos. Austin hasn't been charged, but she was a no-show at pre-slating meetings last week at which candidates for 2020 races introduced themselves. Politico went on to note that Austin is vice chairman of the Cook County Democratic Party. And I'm not sure if the news cycle has washed this person away from your memories yet, guys, but the chair of the Cook County Democratic Party is Toni Preckwinkle. Remember her? Ran for mayor, got beat by Lori Lightfoot, like handedly. Politico asked Preckwinkle if Carrie Austin should be allowed to keep her position. Preckwinkle said that she hasn't decided on whether to ask Austin to step down, saying, quote, "There's a difference between an investigation and a criminal charge." So Ben Joravsky, let's just park it here. Go read the rest of the story on Politico if you want to read the rest. I'm going to ask you your thoughts on Carrie Austin. What do you know about her past, and should she step down from her position?
I do not believe she should step down right now. I believe in the system we have. You're innocent till proven otherwise. And by the way, and Toni Preckwinkle is absolutely correct. Unless I missed something, Miles, she has not been charged with anything officially. There is an investigation. So you shouldn't just step down because they're investigating you. They may not find anything. It's this conclusion that people leap to that she's automatically guilty of something because she's a Chicago politician and she must be guilty because we only elect guilty politicians. Is not fair. So I do not believe. I think it's premature to talk about her stepping down. In terms of Carrie Austin, I urge everyone. Franz Spielman wrote a great article, a profile of Carrie Austin. Franz Spielman, of course, the Chicago Sun-Times political reporter, city council reporter, city hall reporter. He's been covering Carrie Austin forever and interviewing her forever. And it was really delightful. It was a delightful profile of Carrie Austin. Just really showed you her sort of personality, her caustic sense of humor, her very cynical view about life in general and Chicago politics. So I urge everyone to read that. What's your general thoughts about this, Miles?
Well, I agree. I mean, I also think it doesn't look great when any alderman has their office raided by the FBI, particularly now when we know that there's multiple investigations going on. There was, Willie Cochran just got sentenced to a year. Solis was wearing a wire for 2 years. So who knows what's on that and what comes out of it. So people are rightful to be suspicious. I think also her immediate response, I mean, she just kind of went AWOL for a while until we got this statement. So people can understand. I think that you got to let the system play out, and until she's charged with a crime, you can't ask her to step down.
Well, yeah, from what I read, the initial scuttlebutt is that it's somehow or other related to what else, a TIF deal in her ward. But again, this is just scuttlebutt. Nobody knows for certain. It's the investigation, so you do have to let it play out. And but yeah, I don't know, Chicago. Miles, you're born in Chicago. You're a Chicago kid from Whitney Young High School.
That's right.
Beverly, the area. I mean, have you ever lived in a city other than Chicago?
I lived in New York. I went to college in New York, so I was there for about 4 years.
So is there a culture in New York that's akin to Chicago in terms of cynical, jaded, corrupt local politics?
Well, it's certainly a different scene. I mean, I was there around 2004, 2005, the Bloomberg years in New York, and it was kind of I think there was a cynicism then. I think right now the council there looks completely different, and obviously de Blasio is much more of a ally to progressive groups in the city. So it's, there is a kind of revitalization, I think, of political and civic engagement there, which is also happening on the state level, which we could go into. What's happening in New York, they just passed these amazing housing laws that really struck a blow to the real estate industry. Something like that, could be a fight that previews what's going to happen here in Illinois with the fight to lift the ban on rent control, the state level. But yeah, I mean, Chicago just has this reputation of being a town of crooks, and time after time we're seeing that play out. And what the counter to that is that we've also seen in this past election a huge group of community organizers elected to office who is as far of a cry as you can get from this pay-to-play stuff. and lifetime, political cretinary that seems to dominate Chicago politics. Now there's just regular people sitting in city council seats, whether it's Jeanette Taylor or Rossana Rodriguez. So I think there's kind of two different visions of what Chicago politics look like, and we're seeing that play out right now. I mean, what just happened here this past week, Carlos Ramirez Rosa and Rossana Rodriguez got together and held these immigrant rights trainings along with State Rep. Will Guzzardi to prepare for what were supposed to be mass raids in Chicago on immigrant families that Trump had said were going to happen until he called them off. And that was a really amazing show, I think, of how people can use their legislative offices as places to organize their communities and protect them from national threats, directly from Trump. And what happened, Trump called off the raids. Obviously, I think it would have been a PR disaster for him to see families getting separated in the streets of Chicago. So he called them off after, this people getting told about their rights, planning these immigrant defense actions. And he called it off and called out Chicago, in his statement. So Trump is clearly paying attention to what's going on here. And that's a very different type of politics than seeing, Willie Cochran hauled off and sentenced. So.
Well, and Donald Trump, and I think in a very real way, understands sort of the traditional character of Chicago politics. It was Donald Trump who very successfully manipulated the powers that be in the Democratic Party, the local Democratic Party, including Ed Burke. He hired Ed Burke as his property tax lawyer to reduce the amount of taxes he has to pay on his tower. And he got Rahm Emanuel City Hall to sign off on that atrocious sign that goes on his tower right in the middle of downtown Chicago. Whenever Dennis are in the Brown line, he goes, look, do your imitation.
Look at my building.
Every time we go by that sign.
People like sitting on the Brown, like, who's that douchebag?
Look at my building, Ben.
And so I think Donald Trump really understood Chicago in a very fundamental way. And now he understands the rest of the country's attitude towards Chicago, or at least his base's attitude towards Chicago. So he uses Chicago, sort of just as a symbol of things that people that he understands intuitively that his voters dislike, integration, different ethnic groups, black people, and Democrats in general, and he uses that successfully to whip up his base of support. I don't know when I followed that from afar. So I guess I have to ask you this: do you think Donald Trump was sincere when he said that he was going to round up the immigrants, or do you think that was just sort of the equivalent of him sending off one of his tweets about obliterating Iran?
Well, I think that it is no coincidence that he put out all of this, these threats about rounding up millions of immigrants, he said. At the same time, he was launching his reelection campaign, because what we saw back in 2015 is he founded his whole campaign on fear and villainization of immigrants, of black and brown communities. And he's continued. That's been a through line throughout his presidency. You can say all kinds of issues he's flip-flopped on. He said he was going to provide everybody health care. He wants to throw people off. He has been consistent on making immigrants the enemy in his story of America. And that, I think, is central to how he is trying to build up his base. And that is runs so counter to what people in Chicago realize is what makes America, and certainly makes our city, a vibrant and rich and, culturally wonderful place to be. Like, what would Chicago look like without Hispanic immigrants or immigrants at all? It would be a completely different landscape. And that might be the vision for somebody like Trump. What I do think is that he knows that, or at least should know that, the immigration enforcement in America does not have the staff right now or the funding to go after millions of immigrants. That just wouldn't be possible with what we have in terms of our resources, which I think is a good thing. We shouldn't have a mass deportation force on call to kick people out of the country, but also he is now using it in almost even a more disgusting way as a threat.
Yeah.
And he's saying, we have 2 weeks and I'm going to use this as a political football to try to extract some other concessions out of Democrats in negotiations. And these are people's lives, these are families. So I don't know what his exact convictions are, but I'm not surprised that that's how it went.
By the way, I should point out to follow up to what you said. Rob Perrell, who is a demographer in the city of Chicago, was on the show about a week ago. We interviewed with him talking about the future of the city of Chicago in terms of population. And the cutoff of immigration into the city has really hurt Chicago in just in terms of the sheer number of people who live here, the vibrancy of neighborhoods, the diversity of Chicago, and that's probably why this area is experiencing a drop in immigration. And frankly, I've said this so many times, Miles, I do not understand. Well, I guess I do understand why people, let's say in North Dakota, are fired up about Donald Trump, playing off prejudice and fears of people with brown skin and riling up his base. But if they viewed it the same way, they need people in their state too.
Of course.
And so it's a typical Trump thing where there's no thought to what he's saying or doing. There's no really plotting out the consequences. And it's just rhetoric that he throws out. I don't know if you saw this, D, or Miles, but the head of the Customs and Border Agency, this story was breaking as we were coming on the air. John Sanders is probably going to step down. It's a temporary position. He was filled a vacancy that was created when the former head of that entity took over Homeland Security. So there's just utter chaos on the part of Donald Trump on the issue.
Well, people don't like being in this position where they're supposed to just respond to whatever the president decides and tweets out at any time. This was clearly not a well thought out plan because they called it off hours before it was supposed to go into effect. So I could understand the head of an agency who's supposed to just, fall in line whenever the president tweets something, says, screw this.
Yeah, figure this one out. So anyway, you got any more updates for us, young man?
No, that's about it. Just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on locally. Now you'll have an answer the next time someone asks you, hey, what else is news? We do have an update here on the question of the day. We tackle the tough issues here on the Ben Joravsky Show. Mick Jagger. Dancer or Prancer? Well, we had someone weigh in on the live stream. Pat Rod, he said he's a gyrator.
Yeah.
Well, we're not really, we got one more to add here. Prancer, dancer, gyrator. According to Kyle Young, well, I'm sorry I said your last name, dude.
Oh, come on, man.
Sorry, Kyle. According to Kyle, he's a strutter.
He struts. Yeah, he struts across the stage.
He said he struts like a rooster. So, live stream chat room, downloaders, if you're listening to this right now, let's just solve this once and for all.
Struts like
Mick Jagger, Prancer, dancer, gyrator, strutter, or something else. I don't know.
I'll tell you one thing he's not. A dancer.
Oh,
Good
wow.
God.
Oh, the Rolling Stones fans are so upset.
I'll tell you one thing, though.
What?
One thing that Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Charlie Watts all agree. You did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. We got more with Miles when we return.
It's Chicagoland's adult entertainment playground. It's the world-famous Admiral Theater, 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. The Admiral is homegrown from Chicago, and it's the most conveniently located club in all of the city. 15 minutes from the O'Hare Airport in downtown Chicago Loop. Voted Chicago's best strip club, the Admiral has showgirls galore and a variety of adult entertainment shows. The world-famous Admiral Theater, open every day from 7 p.m. to 6 a.m., 3940 West Lawrence Avenue. For events, showtime, and other information, visit AdmiralX.com. Must be 18 years of age or older to enter.
Hey, playing now at Steppenwolf Theater, the world premiere of Ms. Black for President. It's inspired by the true, that's true as in it really happened, TRUE story of Joan Jett Black, America's first drag queen presidential candidate. You know who created it, D?
No.
It was created by Tony nominee Tina Landau.
Oh.
And you know who else created it?
No.
Oscar winner Terrell Alvin McCraney. You know him, Moonlight.
Oh, yeah.
For tickets, visit steppenwolf.org. That's Steppenwolf, like the rock group from the 60s, .org.
Hang tight, millennials.
And for the record, I love puppies.
Cirque du Soleil's Big Top comes back to Chicago with its latest show, Volta. Venture into a captivating voyage of discovery inspired by the adventurous spirit of freedom, where a surge of action sparks a high-voltage journey. Volta. Playing May 18th through July 6th under the Big Top at Soldier Field. Tickets at CirqueDuSoleil.com. Volta thanks their partners Hennessy Black and Champagne Nicolas Fayette.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show.
Yes, indeed, we're back. Miles Kampf-Lawson from Indies Times is with us. We were talking local politics. Let's keep it here in the state of Illinois. Let's talk about state politics. J.B. Pritzker signed the reefer bill. Marijuana is now legal, and thanks to Miles, I now sort of understand the difference between hashish and marijuana. Thank you, Miles. And Dr. D is like, yeah, man, I knew that too.
Oh, yeah. Hashish.
Hashish. I went to high school with a kid named Hashish. Anyway, so what do you think, Miles? J.B. Pritzker. I did not vote for J.B. Pritzker in the primary, I have to tell you. And now I have to say I'm very impressed as a person of the lefty persuasion on the Democratic Party that he's been the most progressive governor in my lifetime. I think my lifetime, I have to say. And he's proved me wrong. Mm-hmm. So what's your general thoughts about J.B. Pritzker?
Well, this is a monumental day. Obviously, we now have a legislation that has been signed that's going to go into effect January 1st, where we're going to have the most progressive marijuana legalization in the country. And that's pretty incredible. I mean, the fact that just think about a year, 2 years ago, we were under the rule of Bruce Rauner. We had pretty much every piece of legislation stalled. Things couldn't go anywhere. And we had no budget. We had, crumbling infrastructure and seemingly this antagonistic view towards marijuana, which is clearly an economic, boon for the state. And now we're going to see that put into practice. But not just that, there's going to be social equity elements to it as well. And that's really what sets the bill here apart, is that there's, requirements for funding going back into struggling communities, the very ones who've been ravaged by the war on drugs. And we're going to see business incentives for black and brown-owned businesses to get involved in the business of marijuana. Because when you look at some states like Colorado, it's just all basically wealthy white people that run the whole marijuana industry, and they're the ones that are benefiting and profiting off of this new business, whereas the people that faced the repercussions from marijuana being illegal were primarily black and brown people, so disproportionately. So that's a pretty incredible thing that we have just witnessed in the state, and it seems like it just happened so fast that it's like, oh, this is just how the state runs. But compared to what we had before, it's pretty incredible, and that just adds to this list of pretty incredible accomplishments, not just for Pritzker, but for the supermajorities that Democrats have in the legislature, and really for the community groups that have been fighting for these changes forever. I mean, it's not like the new class of representatives and state senators got in office and wrote all these bills up super quick and got them to the governor's desk. These have been in process for years, and they've been informed by the work of community groups. So whether that's the graduated income tax, the abortion protections, which are incredible, and will help protect Illinois if Roe v. Wade does, in fact, get overturned by Trump's Supreme Court. We got a budget, finally. We got a massive infrastructure bill. One thing that has been fairly uncovered is the contract that got signed with the AFSCME 31. I mean, that had been stalled for years under Rauner, and so they had just been operating off the previous contract. They're getting reimbursement pay. They're getting raises for the next 3 years. And it's, by all accounts, a fairly fair contract. It got ratified by a pretty good margin. So these are really positive steps. What I will say is that I would not go as far as to give this governor an A necessarily. I think there are some areas where we could have gone farther, particularly with the budget. I think Pritzker really wanted to get Republican votes and wanted to make it a bipartisan bill, which is understandable. But as a result of that, they did take out some of the amendments in there that would have put some more taxes on corporations. There was things that closed corporate tax loopholes, specifically around offshoring. Those got removed after Republican objections. So really all of the revenue in that budget is pretty regressive, whether it's the plastic bag tax, the cigarette tax, same for infrastructure. I mean, we're going to see vehicle registration taxes increase. So there are some more regressive elements of this that I think that could have been potentially avoided. That said, I mean, it's hard to imagine a better outcome for people that believe in a progressive agenda for Illinois than what we got.
And this is my theme of the day. There's probably nothing more regressive than our infatuation with gambling as a way to fund government. But put that to a side. I almost feel like I'm nitpicking the guy because the overall movement, and you could put also in that list, SEIU, home care workers got a resolution from a lawsuit that Rauner had filed, and they're going to get back pay increases, much deserved in my humble opinion. So when I look at the total movement and toward the progressive side of things, I'm impressed. And this is a general theme. I'm just sort of working out. I'm going to use you as my guinea pig here. Miles probably write a column about this, but I had put Pritzker when he ran in sort of a ROM category of sort of a whatever you want to call it. I've heard every phrase: neoliberal, corporate Democrat, Dems. But I always thought them those cautious Democrats who essentially thought that the way to govern was to move to the right, cut deals with the business community, cut privatization deals, cut deals with Republicans, malign the left, so that they distinguish themselves from the left, and then try to make themselves look like they're more pragmatic. This is 101 of Romism, and then make it pronounce yourself as a steward of the budget when you close like mental health clinics or schools. And I put I put Pritzker in that category because I didn't know anything about the guy. He had no record. And, his sister sat on the school board. So I just figured, all right, well, he's a billionaire, and I don't think he is. If you judge the man's political worldview by his first 6 months in office, I'd say he is a progressive.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I don't know necessarily what it still is early on. I mean, the slew of legislation that went through should be considered progressive. I mean, that there's no doubt about that. And I think he has taken a more collaborative approach to government than certainly his predecessor did. I mean, when it comes to the marijuana bill, for example, there were groups like Black Roots Alliance, like Chicago and Illinois Normal, groups that had worked on marijuana legalization and on racial equity issues that were helping to write this legislation. So I think that is a credit to a more collaborative approach to government. Certainly, I don't know if that means that, Pritzker is a red or anything like that, that he's
I don't think Pritzker's a red. Yeah. I think we safely assume that.
But I do think that it goes to show that he has a very different view of government that is not as ideologically conservative as what Rahm Emanuel certainly showed when he was in office. And I think that it shows this is, what happens when you not only have a governor who is willing to, sign on to progressive priorities and follow the lead of champions of these issues, but also invested in all these downstate races to get more Democrats elected and to get some progressive Democrats elected too, so that the legislature looks a lot different now and it's willing to sign on to these really big, bold policies. I mean, there was debate that we didn't know that this legalization bill was going to go through until the final hours of the session, basically, and they hustled and they got it done. On that issue as well, though, there were some elements. We still have to see if the governor will in fact expunge all these records and cancel it out, because now it is at the governor's discretion. Before it was automatic within the bill, so I'd hold some applause until that happens. But that still, I mean, it's a pretty impressive feat. And just thinking about that compared to Bruce Rauner and compared to, I don't know if you guys got it in your feed, but I remember the lead up to the general election, I just kept getting these JB Pritzker ads in my Facebook feed that were just like asking about what JB is like his lifestyle choices.
Yeah.
They had him talking about how much he likes Lost and Gilligan's Island. And I was thinking, oh my God, what are we going to be stuck with this guy?
We talked about that all the time. And that is a byproduct of JB Pritzker having so much money. And if you think back about it, Miles, Bruce Rauner, what he effectively did against Pat Quinn when he ran and defeated him in 2014, and what he did against Michael Madigan for those 4 years is vilify and demonize and try to create an image that is a very negative image that people would dislike. and he used his power of the purse to buy up ads to hit him hard with these negative ads. So Pritzker, he had so much money, he could counterattack with like, I'm a nice guy, I like giggles.
And for the record, I love puppies.
You're talking about that.
Yeah, that ad.
Check the feed. Yeah. Oh, then there's this.
Yay for our teachers!
That's
Yay
right.
for our teachers!
Bruce Reiner likes teachers.
Bruce Reiner likes teachers. No, but Pritzker, he liked Steve Miller. Speaking of rock bands, guy can't dance at all, Steve Miller. He doesn't even pretend to dance, unlike Mick Jagger. But so, yeah, you're right. And I believe that was just, that's also what got me a little cynical about him. You know, I was like, well, but that's 101. I mean, of politics. That's what you got to do these days to get elected.
Well, it worked, clearly. I mean, he pounded Rauner, and now he's, pushing forward the most expansive, progressive movement in Illinois politics in a generation.
And by the way, I just want to point out a man who has receded in his position as the most powerful politician in the state of Illinois, Michael Joseph Madigan. Don't hear a lot about Michael Madigan being all powerful. That was a device that Rauner used, supported by the Chicago Tribune, of course, to make Madigan to be so overwhelmingly powerful. You couldn't get anything through, and got everything through. And I see really no strong evidence that Michael Madigan was the captain of the ship to getting this stuff passed.
No, I mean, there will be plenty of debates coming up, in terms of the elected school board bill, with which Cullerton is holding, apparently at the advice of Mayor Lightfoot. And when it comes to repealing the ban on rent control, I mean, I think that's going to be a massive fight, and the governor and all sorts of constituencies are going to have to show which side they're on. It seems from all the referendum votes that happened here in Chicago, I think they were all over 75% positive. People are excited. They at least want to lift the ban and let municipalities decide on whether they're going to enact rent control. And the one people standing in their way is the real estate lobby that got that ban put in place originally in the 90s. So I think that's going to be another challenge to see how they, which side folks are on.
Yeah, I'm curious when Amisha Patel comes on to get her thoughts on rent control. I also get her thoughts on J.B. Pritzker, whether he is a progressive champion of left-wing Democratic policies. All right, before we bring Amisha on, though, I have to ask you about the national politics. You mentioned Bill de Blasio a little while ago, talking about your days in New York with who you were a student in college, right before de Blasio was elected mayor. Now, of course, he's running for president. I don't quite understand why, Miles, and I've got mixed feelings about de Blasio. What's your general thought about, is there anybody in this race that I'm showing him a picture of all the Democratic candidates, or is anyone in there that you support early on that you really like?
I don't think there's any question about who the progressives in the presidential race are, and who are the people that are running to increase their image and their stature and their fundraising. And I think that's the majority of this now 25-person field is people looking out for their future careers and, trying to make a dent, or maybe running like a Jay Inslee, where you're focusing on climate change in particular and you're really trying to inject that issue into the debate, which could be worthwhile. But most of these people are either not necessarily serious candidates, and I would probably put Bill de Blasio among them.
Why is Bill de Blasio running for president of the United States?
Well, every incentive, if you are trying to be a national Democrat, is to run for president. Why would you not? You get to increase your fundraising list, your stature, you get national media attention, you get to, seem like you're an important person. There's a lot of reasons to run for president that are not necessarily thinking you're going to be, or you get picked as VP, or you get picked as some type of cabinet spot or something. You're basically throwing your hat in the ring to say, hey, I'm out here, if you want to.
So what do you think Bill de Blasio, in particular, what does he bring to the race?
Well, he's the governor or the mayor of the most populous city in the country, and so he's got an experience running as a progressive. He's championed some issues like affordable housing and universal health care that I think are very important. But that said, I think that by the end of the race, my prediction is he's going to endorse one of two candidates, and that's Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, because they are the real progressives in this race right now. They're the ones with the support. They're the ones with the wherewithal. They're the ones with the real campaign staffs, the ones ones with the fundraising capacity, and they're the ones that are going to be, I think, running a much longer race that extends far past Iowa, when I think most of these people are going to drop out. And as we saw, there was an Emerson poll just out today that had Bernie Sanders within 7 points of Joe Biden, and that's a pretty incredible. It's right at his heels, basically.
I missed that poll. That's nationwide poll.
It's a nationwide poll. You can look it up. It just came out today, and obviously there's been fluctuations in polls, right? Some of them show Warren in second place. Some of them show Biden with an seemingly insurmountable lead. So I think it is a little early to talk about that, and these debates are going to be really clarifying moments. I think we're going to get to see what people really believe in. What I anticipate is that on Thursday night, Bernie Sanders is going to have some complaints about Joe Biden's record, and that's going to be an important part in this campaign, because really it's a fight for what direction we want to see the Democratic Party go in. And to me, Joe Biden represents a very conservative.
Wait, before you get to the Biden question, I can't remember the lineups. My memory isn't as strong as it used to be. Is Biden going to be on stage with Bernie on Thursday?
That's right.
All right. Okay, I just could not remember that.
That's right. And Warren is on the night before.
The night before. Okay. I would. Wow.
I think they're calling the first night senior night.
No, that would be the second night. You can the second night, because isn't the second night where Biden and Bernie are going?
Biden and Bernie are up. There is
I heard
also
they're calling the second night senior night.
Yeah, the second night.
Okay, Dr. D.
Oh, okay, he's got a million of them.
Buttigieg is going to be on that third night, or in that second night as well.
All right, now, since you brought him up, this is sort of my personal thing here. I'm going to see if you share it. I'm having a little difficulty with the Buttigieg campaign. I'll tell you why. First of all, I think when I compare it to Elizabeth Warren, it's so unfair to me that this guy, I don't even know if unfair is the right word, but it's just where we are in a state of politics in the Democratic Party, that Elizabeth Warren has this incredible resume of doing these amazingly progressive things, and has all these great ideas, is close with Buttigieg, who's done nothing.
But damn charming.
So I don't get it, Miles.
Well, he's got, I don't know if you discussed it earlier, but he's got this whole scandal roiling back in his home city right now, which is not looking good.
Have we discussed it earlier? One more time, folks. Go listen to Henry Davis's interview. We've been talking about this for over a month.
Yeah.
Buttigieg's relationship with the black community in South Bend, which I don't understand why he thought. Again, there's always a level of denial that people are in when they run for office. But how Pete Buttigieg could think he could just waltz in to become president of the the nominee of the Democratic Party for president of the United States, when black people, they comprise like 50% of the vote, I think, in the southern states. And he has this atrocious record in South Bend.
Well, and what is Pete Buttigieg running on? Can anybody name a real policy plank of Pete Buttigieg that sets him apart from other people? I understand that he seems charming and new and has elements that, much like Beto O'Rourke, where the Democratic Party is trying to put forward some type of candidate that can just be a blank slate that people can tack anything they want onto. But I don't think either of them, for one thing, have the political skills of a Barack Obama. And also Barack Obama had a real record that he was running on. I mean, you can argue about what it was, whether it was as comprehensive as some other people. I mean, I think, if you're talking about longevity, that's why I think the Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden dichotomy is so important, because they have both been in public life for so long and have such opposite records.
I'm going to disagree with you on this point. I think that Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke are following the Barack Obama playbook. I think that Barack Obama did not have a legacy, did not have a record. What he had was a position against the Iraq War in 2002, before it was popular to be against the war, that distinguished him from Hillary Clinton. That and his charm, his charisma, and his ability to give a speech got him real far. Yeah. And I think that is a pattern that Buttigieg and Beto O'Rourke are trying to emulate. And I personally, maybe it's a sign of my advancing age, am getting tired of just narratives, if you follow what I'm saying.
I agree with you completely. The only thing I'd say is, at least like Barack Obama had been elected to the Senate, he was on the Foreign Relations Committee, he had been in this kind of national politics space, whereas Beto O'Rourke and Buttigieg, neither of them have come close to that in terms of their political career so far.
And I'll give, now that I took from Barack Obama, I will say he apparently thought about these larger issues of race in our country. history. He thought about him. He wrote about him, in his book about his father. So, but I do believe that in some ways he's hurt Democratic Party. You know what I'm saying? His success.
Well, I think he was really a singular figure. I mean, it's hard to imagine anybody with the political skills of a Barack Obama now. I mean, I have plenty of problems with his legacy as, what he accomplished in office. But I do think as a politician, he was incredibly talented, and it's hard to make that up. And I think that's what the debates are going to show, is that we don't have a character quite like that.
All right. Now, I told you I just came back from California. Sunglasses on and everything when I was hanging out in California. And I was taking a lot of abuse from my millennial friends in California because they say I'm too nice to Joe Biden. All right. And so what's your attitude, Miles, about Joe Biden?
Well, this is a guy who's built his political career on acquiescing to the demands of the right wing in this country. And I don't think there's any way to view his political career besides that, whether it's his opposition to busing and aligning himself with some of the most disgusting people in our political history, whether it's these segregationists he just recently was singing the praises of.
It's extolling,
or Jesse Helms, these people he's worked with, whether it's his work on the crime bill, on building up mass incarceration, whether he was trying to cut basic entitlements like Social Security and Medicare, which he's shown to be done throughout his career, particularly under Obama during his time trying to negotiate this grand bargain that never happened. I think that this is somebody who has not shown any progressive leadership, and instead has given us the view of the Democratic Party as, we're just here to meet the right wing halfway, no matter how far right they go. We're just going to keep on giving appeals towards bipartisanship while selling off basic progressive priorities, whether it's his support, which he's now flip-flopping on for the Hyde Amendment, which basically, would pull back reproductive freedom in the United States, or whether he's now talking, he says, maybe we'll do a public option, but he's standing in the way of Medicare for all, which is clearly becoming the Democratic consensus on the issue of health care. This is not somebody who is going to be a progressive champion, and never have we had a more clarifying contrast between candidates as we have right now, I think, with Joe Biden, who is even more of a conservative force in the Democratic Party than Hillary Clinton was, and people like Bernie Sanders, who's been standing up for a progressive agenda. I mean, he's been saying the same thing for 40 years. And so,
he's been consistent.
Like it or not, that's somebody who's been very clear.
I think it would be beyond irony if Joe Biden were to secure the nomination. Not saying this would happen, but if he were to secure the nomination by suddenly, at this late point in his political career, start talking like Bernie on health care. If that's because it's going to take that, I believe, Miles. The Democratic nominee has got to be strong on health care. Can't do this wishy-washy stuff.
And he's been wishy-washy. And one more thing I'll say, Joe Biden just went to this fundraiser in New York, and he said to these bankers, some of the wealthiest people, said, "You're not the enemy. Nothing's going to have to change fundamentally. Nobody's standard of living is going to have to change." He basically gave the appeal that, it's fine. Everything's working as it should. Where Donald Trump is president, we've seen this massive transfer of wealth to the top. We've seen this tax cut that gave 83% of its benefits to the wealthiest. And yet Joe Biden thinks apparently that that's fine, that rich people won't have to pay up at all, and that we can just keep on swimming along. I don't think that that's a winning message for 2020. And I don't think that that's how most people feel. But they know there has to be a fundamental change, and that has to start with redistributing wealth and power in our society.
Very well put. And by the way, I have to say, their standard of living will not dramatically change if you raise the tax rate on them. That's for certain. You know what I mean?
Well, and also, it just screws with the whole idea of taxes. Having high marginal tax rates is meant to make people not become these insane trillionaire, tycoons. It's to tamp down on the excesses of wealth in our society. It's not just to punish people.
All right, that's Miles Kampf-Lassin from In These Times. Does a great job covering politics for In These Times, and coming on our show talking about politics. We have Amisha Patel standing by. We're going to bring her on with a mystery guest. We'll see who that mystery guest is when we return. Okay, everybody, what you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff, M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy, UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
The Ben Joravsky Show is supported by the Northwestern Summer Writers Conference. Now in its 15th year, the 3-day conference held in Chicago features a diverse array of workshops, speakers, discussions, and readings. Learn more at sps.northwestern.edu/writers. All right, everybody, hour number 2 of your Ben Joravsky Show for Tuesday, June 25th is just moments away. But before we get into that and get all carried away, we would like to thank the following unions once again for jumping on board and helping us bring back the Ben Joravsky Show. So many unions, including the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 in District 8, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150. A giant thank you to those unions for jumping on board and helping bring back the Ben Joravsky Show. And, of course, today's program is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. Hour number 2, let's go. It is Tuesday, June 25th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. In this hour of the program, it's the return of our good friend and grassroots organizer from Grassroots Collaborative. It's Amisha Patel with a mystery guest.
Guest.
Oh my God. And now your host, back from California. I heard he rode like 4 scooters.
Man, don't get me started on those scooters, Amisha Patel.
Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, man. That super trippy music means mystery guest time. Amisha Patel comes on the show once a month or so from the Grassroots Collaborative. Our favorite community organizer, we like to say. And Amisha, you generally bring a mystery guest with you. So first of all, welcome back.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And introduce the mystery guest.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to bring my mystery friend on the show today. She is a fierce organizer of restaurant workers across the city of Chicago, and she will talk more about her work herself. But here is Nataki Rhodes with Rock.
All right, Nataki, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
All right, so tell a little bit about yourself. This is your first visit to our show, our humble airwaves. Introduce yourself to our listeners and talk a little bit about your organization.
Thank you. My name is Nataki Rhodes. I was born and raised in Chicago. I'm a native of Chicago. I'm a single mom of 1 son. He's 24, and a grandmother of a 3-year-old. I've been at Rock Chicago Restaurant Opportunity Center now for about 5 years. I've been a member for 10 years, and I was a restaurant worker for about 17 years in the industry.
17 years working. Now, what jobs did you hold in the restaurant industry?
I held quite a few service, tip work, service, back of the house, front of the house, bartender, bathroom attendant, coat check, pretty much everything.
Bathroom attendant.
Yes, bathroom attendant.
There's still restaurants with bathroom attendants?
Yes, Gibson's.
You know what? I got to get out more, Nataki. I got to go to Gibson. Get that sirloin.
And Quatino's too. Quatino's, I believe they still have bathroom attendants too.
I never understood. I know we're in a tangent here, but I never understood the philosophy of having a bathroom attendant. Is there a rhyme or reason? Do people like having?
Yes, actually, people love having bathroom attendants because we help people to come into the bathroom, greet you, to feel how you're doing. You might need some mints. I might need to tell you got lipstick on your teeth. You might need anything. Some people bring their daughters in for the experience. They're very manable. They leave tips, and they need a lot of help. You'll be surprised. A lot of ladies need help.
Okay, that's the ladies' room.
And the men's room, too.
I'm just putting it out there. The last thing I want to do is have a conversation in a restaurant, Marshall. But you know what? That's just me. All right, let's move on and talk about the issues that you're championing with your organization.
Oh, yes. So Restaurant Opportunity Center, we've been in Chicago since 2008, and we organize and work with restaurant workers and service workers and tip workers across Chicago. Our biggest thing is to improve working conditions and wages for low-wage workers that's in the industry. And also we work with employees that like to improve the industry by making sure that they're doing and servicing their employees right.
Now, Amisha, generally when there's been talk about raising the minimum wage that restaurant employees have, the notion is that I remember the old mayor putting this out there, not the 2 mayors ago. Mayor Daley, was very protective of the interest of the restaurant industry. We always say we're going to drive the good restaurants out. He even said that about cigarette smoking. I don't know if you remember that, Nataki, but Mayor Daley was against banning cigarette smoking in restaurants on the notion that somehow or other that would drive restaurants out of the city of Chicago. I think it was just the opposite, and I was proved right on that issue. But what impact would some of your proposals have on the restaurant industry?
Well, we're excited about an ordinance that we have introduced in the City Council, our Raise Chicago ordinance, which aims to get to $15 an hour by 2021, and the goal is to include as many workers as possible and to not leave a single worker behind. So what people may not know is that when the Chicago Raise minimum wage got increased a few years ago, that we also worked on. We were pushing, of course, all of us have been fighting for 15 for years. We got, a manual starting point was $11, but we, through our organizing, at least got to 13, which is where we're about to hit right now. But what people don't necessarily know is understand is there are a bunch of workers who were carved out, and then there are workers who did not get enough of an increase, the same increase that other workers got. And so we're really trying to fix these things with this ordinance to say everybody in. It doesn't make sense to have improve the lives of some working conditions for some set of workers, but not for others, and to leave others behind. And so our campaign is to get $15, and that would include eliminating the tipped wage that exists for restaurant workers. So again, tipped workers, folks who work in the restaurant industry and other industries, do not get they have a sub minimum wage. They do not have the same minimum wage as other workers. And so the idea is that there should be one fair wage, right? And there should be, again, all work is equal. But also to really address, and then Nataki can definitely talk more about this, but the embedded racism and sexism within tipped worker wages, and the fact that women of color get less pay and get less tips than white male servers or workers do. And so our ordinance is to say, look, everyone should be able to get a $15 wage. The Pritzker, of course, has passed and signed into law legislation for $15, but that doesn't get to $15 in Chicago or anywhere in the state until 2025. So that would mean that Chicago workers would not have have an increase in weight, in their salary for years and years and years, and that actually we waiting for downstate workers to start to get their increases when we know the cost of living in Chicago is incredibly high, and there's no need for Chicago workers to have to wait. That we should get to $15, and that's what we're trying to do right now.
So what year do you hope to get the $15 an hour in?
2021.
2
years.
2 years.
So
now.
go up to 14 next year, and then 15 by 2021.
And so what do you make of the general argument that the restaurants put forward? Well, waitresses or waiters get tips, so they're already making more than $15 an hour, and you're just asking for more. You're going to take away from us, and we won't be able to operate. That's the general argument. Either one of you to address that one.
So you just came from California, and so California right now is one of our one fair wage states. The workers there, the tip workers there in California they are $15 an hour, and they make way more tips. We are not saying that we don't want our tips. Our tips are, our gratuity for sure serving you right. California, San Francisco, the tip workers make high tips because the industry and the people are still tipping them, even though they are making good wages now. And so we're saying that here in Chicago, which is the third largest city, we're saying that we can do the same thing by paying service workers $15 an hour, phasing in. We'll be phasing ours in till 2023, a phase in, and still be able to keep our tips. Our tips are our gratuities and our service, but we still should be able to make a wage.
Oh, wait, so time out. So for tip employees, the $15 an hour would not hit until 2023. Did I get that correct? So 2021 for everybody else, 2023 for waiters and waitresses, service, etc.
Because at this moment there's such a differential that to get up to for tipped workers to get up to $15, we need a little bit more time to do that. But the goal is to get there. And to your point in terms of what the restaurant industry and their argument that tipped workers don't need a raise because of tips, I think what we've seen time and time again is that again the take-home pay of restaurant workers is incredibly low. Too many restaurant workers live in poverty. There's this mythology around the kind of tips that people make, and certainly in some restaurants and some places, workers are able to make good tips, but that's not true across the board. Really, the system leaves people in poverty, and it leaves again, women of color in particular, dealing with most of those issues because of again the way that racism and sexism works in terms of who gets tipped and how much they get tipped.
What about the issue of health care? How much of the industry is covered by their employees? Taki's looking at me like, no one.
So once again, I love this industry. I was brought into this industry in 1999 because my own job, where I was making $55,000 a year, shut down. Versus an all steel press company over on 93rd and Woodlawn. It was a stamping press company, and so
what year did it close? Did you say
it closed in? I was laid off in 1999. It closed down in 2000. And so I was making good money. I was in a union and everything.
$55,000 a year.
Yeah, and I was a painter de boer. Yeah, I was making good money. And so as I've been in this industry, I've always relied on Medicaid and food stamps in this industry. I've never had a job or worked at a restaurant that paid full benefits with paid sick days and vacation time and health benefits. It's very rare in this industry that happens, especially now that a lot of work has shifted to job agencies.
Now, so much of the rhetoric of the last mayor was all about building Chicago's tourist industry up, making Chicago a destination site that people want to come to. And I had this issue with him when the hotel workers went on strike. I'm like, well, if we're doing such a great job, and he was always promoting the last mayor's whose name I just can't remember at the moment, Nataki. He was always promoting his efforts to build the number of tourists that come to town and proving that by showing the number of stays in hotels was going up, et cetera, et cetera. What you're telling me is something we probably all know and look the other way, is that it really is another example of a tale of two cities here, where you have a flourishing industry for tourists, for people like maybe own the restaurant or own the hotel,
Absolutely.
but the people who work there are not getting the benefits of this. Is that correct?
Absolutely, because you, as I said, you can work down in the Gold Coast and you can make $625, but your tips are going to be like $300, $200. This is true. The further you go into the city, north you go. But when we come back into the south side, the Applebee's, the IHOPs, the Olive Gardens, there's no way you're going, as a waiter, you're going to make $200 something a night, because nothing on the menu costs that much. And so you will find yourself making $6.25 an hour, trying to make up the tip in the wage. And if it's a slow night, you might not make that. So the onus is left up to Wendy's IHOPs or them to pay you. And that's where pretty much the wage stuff come in, because now you're arguing back with the owner about if you should, if you could, did you make it? And so that's where you lose a lot of money.
Well, this gets into the Fair Work Week issue, which will
Absolutely.
raise that one as well. So what kind of resistance are you facing so far, Misha, in these early moments of this organization?
Well,
organizing.
Yeah, so far, I mean, we introduced, and I think had 37 aldermen sign on to the legislation, which is wonderful. I think the question will be, what's the campaign? The challenge will be to make sure that we hold them as the opposition that we expect to comes, and in particular, the restaurant industry. Fought us really hard the last round. We know they're going to fight hard again this round. And, I think there's a lot of work to do to really educate the communities about the reality of tipped workers. We're also working to eliminate the youth wage, right? Young people get paid less than adults do for the same work. And, many young people in the city of Chicago those wages are going to take care of their families. They're going to take care for college like tuition. They're going to take care of basic needs of their families. And it doesn't make sense that young people are getting paid less than and are exploited for their work because of that differential for their age. So this really, what we're trying to do is actually lift up the stories and the realities of work of all kinds of workers in the city. And we expect that there will be, there will be opposition to many of the workers that we are trying to include, and we'll be ready to take that on. So currently, we're not, it's early in the campaign. We've introduced strongly, which we're excited about, but the truth will be coming in to see what kind of pushback there is. Mayor Lightfoot has come out in support of $15 by 2021. Now, whether she'll support, again, keeping all workers in will be another thing.
In other words, she hasn't come on to support keeping restaurant workers, to tip employees, as you call them, in.
Yes, because our opposition is very heavy. The Illinois Restaurant Association, the Chambers of Commerce, they always step in and get in the way of workers. And so we're so grateful that this is the best ordinance that's ever been put forth, thanks to the coalition and grassroots collaborative for including tip workers, because actually tip workers, the word black workers was the first tip workers here in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago, with the Pullman Porter Museum. And so we were the first one that actually had to fight for wages. And Philip A. Randolph took this fight all the way to Washington, D.C. And so now I see myself, as my ancestors had to fight this fight, I have to fight this fight again. For many young women that suffer from sexual harassment, also are the first jobs that they encounter are the restaurant industry jobs. And so young women from 16 to 22 don't even realize when they're being sexually harassed, being talked to uncomfortably, being sexually harassed by their counterpart, by their manager. They're not even realizing, because they're working so hard for their tips. And this is the first job and the first time that many of young women's and that I've talked to have experienced sexual harassment, and it goes unreported in this industry. So it's a lot of work to be done, and it's a lot of work to be done because it affects a lot of young Black women, Latino women, and women in Chicago right now.
You mentioned 37 aldermen. Who are the sponsoring? If you said, I just didn't catch it. Who are the sponsoring?
Sophia King is our lead sponsor. Alderman Haddon, Byron Sixto Lopez, and why am I blanking on my
new
fourth?
ones.
Yeah.
The new ones.
We've got
Martin Matten, Carlos Rosa, Michael Rodriguez. I talked to him, and he signed on to it. We talked to Roderick Sawyer. He says he's for tip workers because his daughter is a tip worker.
We've got strong support.
Right, and I got to give him his props because he actually started the first 15 back when we tried to pass it before.
Well, they knocked the tip workers out. I remember that fight.
Exactly.
They said, get the tip workers out. That was typical Rahm. Get the tip workers out. We cut a deal. We don't want to get the restaurant industry mad at it. I just got finished saying. And it's interesting. Now, Lori Lightfoot, has she made any kind of commitment one way or the other with the tip workers, or is she saying, I'm exploring?
I think she needs to be educated about the history about tip workers that exist here in Chicago. I think she needs to know that there are restaurants like Honey Butter Fried Chicken, Demo's Pizza, Sugar Bliss, especially Honey Butter Fried Chicken. They are a big supporter of us. They are one of our raised members. They come and testify. There are workers that are making $15 an hour and that are enjoying good work, good quality of work because they work for a good restaurant. So we do have a massive support of workers that are here in Chicago, that are there in California, that are there in San Francisco, can say actually like, hey, this is what it's like to make this type of money. So I think once we have the briefings with the mayor and really let her know that Sam Toya and the Illinois Restaurant Association, they have to not get in the way of workers making a better way for themselves, especially with them bringing casinos and everything. More tip workers are going to be coming into Chicago that's not going to be in the union. And so we're thankful for Misha and Grassroots Collaborative because we actually are non-union workers that are not being represented by the big union. So we're thankful for that.
Well, speaking of which, Bob Ryder was in here last week championing the Fair Work Week legislation proposal, which I don't know where it is right now in the city council. And how does that correspond with what you're doing?
I mean, I think it's we're in this moment of really trying to put forward multiple solutions that will affect, that will actually address key issues facing workers in the city. So scheduling and having the ability to plan your work week, to know what kind of work hours you're going to get is all really critical for worker. Wages are another piece. Like these are all kind of, addressing some of the challenges that low wage workers in particular have been experiencing for some time. So I think these are both measures that will make Chicago be the place where workers want to be. And I think that's a real important story to tell because we're going to hear from the employer side about how bad this is for business. But the reality is actually workers are going to be fighting to come into the city of Chicago. If you have if you have actually more ability to understand what your schedule is going to be like, you have a guarantee of what your hours are going to look like, you have higher wages. This is the kind of climate that actually attracts workers. You're going to have a better stability of your workforce in those workplaces. All of that is better for business and better for the economy. And so both of these pieces of legislation, I think, really work together to address some key challenges that workers have been experiencing, and we have the chance in Chicago to actually make some significant moves forward for working people.
So the fair wage, when will that be coming up for a hearing? Has that been scheduled yet?
For the $15?
$15, yeah.
Well, it hasn't been scheduled for a hearing yet. We know in August the city council doesn't meet, so we expect, we're obviously working and organizing, in July as well and through the summer. So we'll, we expect to have more of that happen when they come back
Will
after
it be
their August break.
Sue Sadlowski-Garza's committee that it goes through?
Yeah, it's there.
Well, that's a big change right there.
That's good. That's
a huge change.
Has she been supportive of this one?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, she's been, she definitely has been, she's a huge champion of the, and she's currently, really trying to get Fair Work Week passed and moved through, and that's what she's focusing in on. But she's been who we've been talking to through this whole process, and is going to be playing a key role in this passage.
Well, it is encouraging to see these kind of progressive matters getting heard, not getting buried. Nataki not being buried in the rules committee, not getting just pushed to the side. That's been the pattern. Amisha, you and I have talked about this for so long.
Everything that we've worked on. Everything. Yeah.
And it's going to benefit our youth of Chicago because when you're making good money, you're going to see crime go down. You're not going to see so many young black men or young people on the street. My son actually had to come in and testify with two other youth workers up in Fair Work Week about what would it be like to make a good schedule, what it would it be like for a young person like him that's a father already to have be able to work in a world where he can have the authority over his schedule. What would that look like?
No, it's crazy. That
It's
schedule
crazy.
thing is out of its mind. We had one writer on it. I agree with him 100% on that one. It's absolutely crazy. Somebody shows up to work and is told, no, we don't need you today. Go home. Well, you got the babysitter. You know what I mean? It's insane. And it really gets to the larger issue. And Amisha and I talked about this many times. Chicago, like the tale of two cities in this town, where there's one town that's flourishing, people doing really well, and then there's I think the larger parts of the city that's not doing well, and it's just sort of like pushing people out of Chicago. That's kind of how they try to solve the problem of poverty in the city of Chicago. And I think it's encouraging to see like these citywide initiatives to try to address that in a meaningful way by giving working people more money.
Yeah, and especially the LGBTQ community, because most of my friends are tip workers. I can talk to hundreds and hundreds of my friends that they are started in the service industry. They work in this industry, but this industry hasn't showed that they care about workers. And so from the LGBT community, from Little Village community, from Inglewood community, from Chatham community, from Park Manor community, I've lived in this city 46 years. I've worked nowhere else but in Chicago. And let me tell you, I have a lot of colleagues and friends that because this industry doesn't pay the equal amount of wages that it deserves, a lot of my friends, including myself, almost been homeless. This is the root of homelessness, evictions, people losing their cars, red light tickets. We have a service industry of workers that would like to pay our red light tickets, don't want to be evicted, like to pay your rent on time, but you have to work 2 jobs because the service industry doesn't allow you to have 40 hours a week, like as a regular job with the good package. So we want respect in this industry. And so bringing $15 an hour, phasing it in and standing up to the Illinois Restaurant Association about getting in the way of young women that's in this industry that deserves this money to be made in this industry is wrong, and we have to stand up for that.
All right, very good. I have to tell you this. Yes, indeed. I did just return from visiting my daughter in California,
Yes.
and I got home today. I took the red eye in, and Nataki, I have to tell you, I'm not making this up. The first thing I saw when I got on my block was the city towing a car. I was like, back home in Chicago. No, excuse me. One person was writing the ticket on another car, and another. God damn it. city, man. I'm going back to California. But
High
I'm sure
wages and high tips.
high wages and by the way, California's no joke. It's that's a whole. It's not Nirvana in California. The cost of housing in California is outrageous. But that's a subject for another time. Nataki Rhodes in the studio with me. Amisha Patel in the studio. When we come back, I'm going to ask Amisha Patel to give us an update on Lincoln Yards and also get their thoughts on these upcoming presidential debates. What should progressives be looking for from the Democrats running for president? We'll be right back.
Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan. Today's Ben Joravsky Show is brought to you in part by Green Element Resale. It's located at 6241 North Broadway in Chicago. Furniture, appliances, lamps, books, clothes, electronics. It's a thrift shop, but it's the only thrift shop in Chicago that helps bring you the Ben Joravsky Show. So if you're ever on Broadway between Granville and Devon, tell them thank you and go check out Green Element Resale, 6241 North Broadway, and find more information at greenelementresale.com.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Our friends at the Chicago Sun-Times are offering you, our listeners, an exclusive deal on unlimited digital access to all of the stories you love. Unlock every feature, video, and podcast, just like this show, The Ben Joravsky Show, by signing up now for a digital subscription. For a limited time only, you can lock in our lowest rate yet, only $29.99 for a full year of all the news that you need to know. Stay up to date on breaking stories, get the deep dives and investigations from Sun-Times reporters, cheer for the big games with the best sports team in the city, and go deep inside City Hall with best-in-class political reporting from Fran the Woman Spielman and other reporters. $29.99 for a full year of unlimited access. You can't really do better than that. Take advantage of this exclusive deal now at suntimes.com/Ben. Oh, wait, hold on. Let me play the song here. Hang tight. We're about to come. There we go.
Forgot the song.
Can't forget the song.
No, I can't forget the song.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show. Mr. Joravsky, take us home.
All right, we're coming in another super cool show, as that song says. And by the way, that Nataki Rhodes, not only is she a great organizer, not only is she a great waitress, not only she can mix one hell of a drink as a bartender, that's her playing the piano, all right?
Wow.
Nataki Rhodes can do it all right?
Kept that piano bit. Went all the way to California.
I went to California and kept the piano bit. All right, Nataki. Right, by the way, before I forget, I've just got to get this straight. Where can people get in touch with you if they want to find more information about your campaign for tip workers, or if they want to join up, or if they're tip workers, want to form a union? How about that? There's a radical thought.
That will be our next move, to make us stronger and to make sure that we have power and to make sure that we're represented throughout the community. You can follow me at Nataki Rock on Facebook, and you can email me at nataki@rockunited.org.
Gotcha. And we'll put that on our Facebook wall as well, get that information out. Amisha Patel, I need an update on Lincoln Yards. The last time you were here in the studio, the mystery guest was a lawyer who is leading the fight to upend the Lincoln Yards TIF handout. I think boy, that's a lot of money that could go to some
South
waitresses.
Side.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking of waitresses and bartenders.
Waitresses, yeah.
Southside could definitely use a little
West
of that money.
Side.
$1.3 billion for Lincoln Yards. So what's the latest on the Lincoln Yards lawsuit?
Yeah, we last week filed an injunction. So what that basically means is we are working to stop any single payment from the city of Chicago that is in that TIF redevelopment agreement with Lincoln Yards. So to win an injunction, part of the thing you have to do is actually prove that you have probable cause that you could win. And so I think we have done that in laying out how the city has violated the but-for clause in the TIF statute, which basically says that the TIF the actual development would not happen but for the TIF subsidy. And clearly, they haven't done that. That land is going to develop no matter what. It has got one of the primest, is that a word? Primest real estate property in the state, if not even, kind of up there in the country. It is the part of the whitest, wealthiest parts of the city of Chicago. So we lay out, our lawyers help us lay out the argument for why the injunction should hold and why the city should not move forward with the TIF redevelopment agreement. So we're trying to hold up the $1.3 billion from being actually a single dollar of that being moved out to Lincoln Yards.
And how has the city responded?
They have not responded yet. So I can't remember the window of time that they have to respond, but they have not responded. They were supposed to respond to our original lawsuit by last week, Monday, and they asked for an extension, which I guess they have the right to do. So
the response was to ask for an extension.
That's all, and then yes, that's the only, if you call that a response, but certainly nothing for the injunction itself either. But we're moving forward. It is ridiculous that this money might get moved out to Sterling Bay and for this particular development. So we're doing everything we can to fight it.
All right, I'm following that one. I thought that their response was to say, we don't know what to do. We're going to punt and try to figure this thing out.
Pretty much.
And but sooner or later, they will have to take a stance on this, because you're asking for an injunction. Then that means that not a nickel could go to Sterling Bay. Well, I don't know what that impact that would have on the entire project itself, because my guess is that they're borrowing money against the promise that they're going to get the public dollars to pay back the loans.
Yep.
So if you get an injunction saying they can't get the public dollars, that's suspended. That could curtail their ability to borrow money.
I think our argument is that they've got the resources there to do that development without the public dollars. But that is we are working to try to say, again, to say that this isn't where public dollars should be spent, and it's in violation of the law.
I think your argument falls under the category of this. That is not my problem.
That's right.
Misha Patel argument. Sorry, not my problem. And all right, now let's talk some national politics. I know we're going to be talking Lincoln Yards the next time you come on, because probably that will emerge. A response from the city will at least emerge by that. Let's talk national politics. As you heard when I was talking to Miles when you guys came into the studio, tomorrow and Thursday are the first debates, the national presidential debates. There's 25 candidates running. I'm not going to give you a trivia.
Like the mayor race.
Like the mayor race. More, actually. We only had 14 for the mayor's race. I'm not going to give you a trivia contest here, Nataki, to ask you all the candidates. But we were talking briefly off the mic, and you were sort of expressing your opinions. Going into this race, are there any that really speak to you, that speak to the issues that you've been championing, that talk about dealing with income inequities in this country?
Absolutely. Well, I would definitely have to say Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris a little bit. Bernie Sanders, why? Because he actually is definitely to introduce, helped us introduce a $15 an hour raise the wage on the federal level. And so we had 15 legislators to sign on the federal level to move $15 an hour from $2.13 on the federal level for tip workers, and to move it to $15 an hour. So Bernie Sanders is a big champion in moving wages, working with low-income families, helping them to come out of poverty. Elizabeth Warren, I love her too, because definitely women's issues is my issues and her issues. So I'm watching to see. It's going to be interesting. It's probably going to be more than the mayor race, I guess.
Yeah, more. And Joe Biden? What are your thoughts about Joe Biden? Oh, everybody does that in this show. Everybody who comes on. No love for Joe?
Well, because the progressive, we looking for more progressiveness, and with the health care, with them and that, with Obama and the health care and the thing. So I think we want more progressive to try to tackle certain issues that we thought that we were going to be able to tackle with the Obama administration.
Yeah, Obama did. How do I put this? I don't want to say he wimped out. That's kind of strong, but he backed off on pushing for Medicare for all or for a single-payer plan, and we've got this bizarre Obamacare thing that is really, it's sad to say, is the only hope for many people in this country when it comes to health care. Amisha Patel, what's your thoughts about the upcoming debate in the presidential race?
To me, I think the challenge is like who's going to break through and talk about something real. And I do think there's like a couple of candidates who've put out real plans on a range of issues. And, Sanders and Warren are definitely those two. To me, I'm going to be listening for, who talks about racial equity in a real way, who's actually, speaking to communities of color in their, in their plans and their understanding of the issues and how they impact people. There's a thing that I think happened when Trump got elected, which is that, the Democratic Party, and many people really just focused in on the key question was like, well, how are we going to get to white voters? And I think it's really important, meanwhile, how Black women have voted has been really critical to so many election after election, and that doesn't get, that's not the thing in the moment. It's like the white working class voters. And I mean, we have to look at all working class voters and all, and voters of color. But I do think it's really important to see who's actually going to, speak for the issues of communities of color in this moment of horrific behavior by the Trump administration at the border, and this moment of rising incarceration that is devastating communities of color. I'm looking for someone who's going to speak on those issues and also who will take on the roots of the economic challenges in this country, which is like, let's look at Wall Street and the role that Wall Street is playing in wrecking the economy, the role that Wall Street plays in private detention centers that's starting to come up. I mean, there's all these intersections of what's happening that we have to actually get to the base of. And, is there going to be a candidate who's going to, there's not going to be a lot of time. I mean, there's a ton of people on the stage, not a lot of time. But I think, what do you do with your moments, and who are you talking about, and how are you talking about them is going to really matter.
And your early thoughts about Joe Biden?
My early, middle, and late thoughts about Joe Biden are that Joe needs to go. Those are my thoughts.
Oh, me, she's so hard at Joe. Grandpa Joe, yeah. I hear you.
No, I mean, I thought Miles said it well, and I don't need to say it again, but no is what my thoughts are about Joe. No.
But it's remarkable how far the Democratic Party has moved to the left in just the last 10 years, because Joe Biden was Barack Obama's running mate in 2008, and I don't recall hearing much discussion in the 2008 election or the 2012 re-election about Joe Biden's centrist or right of center even past. I don't recall hearing about, like, let's say the crime bill in the 90s. I don't remember hearing anything remotely resembling any of that in 08 or 12. He was Barack Obama's wingman, and as a result, a lot of Democrats, and he did, and here I am defending Joe Biden, Amisha.
Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I always come back to defending Joe Biden. It's really hard, by the way. You tried defending Joe Biden.
No, I don't need to. Nobody needs to. You don't need to.
He did such a great job in the debate, I thought, against Sarah Palin in 2008. All right, that's my defense of Joe Biden.
This Joe Biden thing you're going. It's a phase, I hope.
It's a phase. Oh, look who else is just dumping on Joe Biden.
Well, could it be, too, that the vice president's, who was it, Sarah Palin for McCain, and then Paul Ryan was, those people are awful. You know what I mean? Compared to those vice presidents.
Well, let me just say this about Sarah Palin. And we've forgotten. Sarah Palin was Trump before Trump. And Sarah Palin she was the first one. And it was Biden who had to meet her in that debate. And I thought he did a good job about that. But that debate, if you go back and watch that debate, I've said this many times in the show, Nataki, it shows you, again, how far we're more of a progressive party now. The Democrats are the things that Biden said in that 2008 debate are just outrageous by today's standards, particularly on gay marriage, for instance. So times have changed tremendously. I'll be watching. Will you be watching tomorrow?
Yes, of course I will. I will be watching. I can't help it. I'm a junkie for that.
And Amisha, anything before we let you go? Anything? Any other announcements you want to make? Any websites you want to talk about? Anything else?
Yeah, people can, as always, find us on grassrootscollaborative.org, Facebook, email, Twitter, follow us and get involved. There's a ton of issues at the city. There's a moment where we can really move forward a big, bold agenda, and we need folks out. This idea that it's just going to happen because Lightfoot as mayor is completely wrong. We have to work and organize. We have to hold her accountable, and we have to actually move our agenda forward in a very bold and clear way. So we are always looking for more folks to come out and support. We have a fundraiser coming up. It's what is it called? A bags and brews. That thing where you throw bean bags into that, in bags.
Bags.
That thing, bags.
Cornhole,
right. So we're doing
bags way better.
We're doing this, and we have an event in July that should be fun. So people can can find us online to find out about that. It'll be a fun event to get together and keep building support for the issues that we all care about.
All right, very good. Amisha Patel, Nataki Rhodes, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Miles Kampf-Lassin was here earlier from In These Times, did a great job. Talk about politics, what's going on state, national, and local level. Leah, great job as always as our editor. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. You know what they call him back down there, Nataki? They call him White Lightning in Alton, Illinois. Did you?
No, they don't. No one ever called me that.
Anyway, you did a great job. Give yourself a raise. Take it out of petty cash. See you tomorrow, everybody.
Remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/Joravsky and chicagoreader.com, or wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Find us on social media at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, on both Facebook and Twitter. The Ben Joravsky Show on Instagram. Enjoy your day.